Hello and welcome to the channel. In this article, we are going to discuss about the data protection bill which is going to be tabled soon in the parliament. If you haven't seen the previous video on online sexual harassment and privacy issues, I would recommend you to please do watch that video. Only that this video will value add to the information. Also, I would suggest you that after listening to the discussion, please read the article by your own so that it will give you more clarity. I will attach this PDF in my Telegram channel. The link will be in the description. I would also request you to do like and subscribe the channel. It would encourage me to make more such videos. Thank you. Now, let's begin with discussion. It is about India's data protection law. This article will give you few inputs to enhance your understanding, also to use the information in the answers. Although the depth of the information is not very much, but the interlinkability of how the bill and the issues impact our daily life is well written in this article. So I am also going to explain in a very simple language that how everyday use can impact our lives, and how this data protection bill is very crucial to protect the privacy of individuals. The author says that Europe is not India, and the standards of European country when it comes to climate change and when it comes to data protection is very high when it compares to developing countries, especially India. So Europe came up with the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, and it came in 2018 and was very comprehensive, and it was acknowledged all over the world. It was appreciated, and it had some stringent rules to protect the direct and indirect privacy of an individual. Also, it is still stigmatized with some challenges because of the legal structure of Europe. There are certain challenges due to which it has not been fully implemented. Okay, but presently that is the ideal standard, that is the hallmark of every regulation around privacy. So in the author mentions about that. The author says also that has been relegated to a status of paper tiger. This line is frequently used when it is referred to something which is very comprehensive, which is well established, but it is just on the paper and not implemented on the ground. So the author is saying that GDPR, although very comprehensive, very idealistic, but still it seems to be a paper tiger. Then the author compares with the India. The situation in India is of drafting a law which is a toothless in the initial in the paper itself. Okay, India must guard against the risk of enacting a law that is toothless in effect. Okay, the problem with GDPR is implementation, and that is because of the legal structure in Europe. But the author is saying that India must be cautioned that instead of legal structures, we should not make a law that is toothless in effect, that does not have even any implication on the ground. Okay, so that is there. At least GDPR was something in in idea, in the paper it was something. Issues around data use. Okay, so the author is saying that this data protection bill, this is the third bill that is going to be tabled. Initially two bills were tabled, one in 2018-19 and then again in 2022. In 2022 the bill was open for public consultation, but because of many challenges and hue and cry because of the gaps in the bill was withdrawn, and again it has been tabled. Now the author is saying it still have critical gaps that is still not addressed, and it is same in the spirit as of 2022. So there are not many changes. Okay, so first the features. When it comes to the features of the bill, the author starts from here that the scope and definition of the bill is very limited. It only impacts that data that is directly or indirectly related to an individual. This means that the societal data or data of a community is not is not taken care of. Only individual data is taken care of. But the problem is that even the societal data can be used to target any person. That is known as non personal data. It can be used to target, profile, predict, and monitor use. The author here uses one example that how many we can predict the behavior of people by seeing that how many people buy things on Amazon between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m. So this is a societal, the community wise data which still can be used to target individual. Okay. Often this non-personal data when combined with other data set can help identify individuals. This is one. And the other example the author says, for example, I booked a Uber on Sunday at 10 a.m. So this information can be used to profile individual depending on the religion. Okay. If on certain festivity the person books the cab, then the person can be identified belonging to a Christian community or a Hindu community or some other community. Okay. So that is how profiling can be done, and this feature is known as re-identification of non-personal data. Okay. This phrase is very important, re-identification of non-personal data. Okay. So the author is saying that present bill only has scope and definition of a privacy related issue with respect to individual data and not a community wise data, and it also does not include re-identification of non-personal data. Okay. So that is why it is limited in scope and effect. This is one. And the effective solution which the author proposes, that please add a penal provision in the bill against the entity who uses this, re-identifies this non-personal data. So whoever that recycles this data, non-personal data, to identify individual, that must be punished with a penal provision. That is one suggestion. It can be written in way forward. Then limited reach of data protection board. Now this is a board which has the features of adjudication. What is adjudication? To solve the disputes between user and law, user versus entity versus law. Okay. So the parties, if there is any dispute, they can approach the board. So the author is saying it is also board power is also limited. Okay. The issue is there is inability to initiate a proceeding on its own. So the term that is used is suo motu cognizance, that the board cannot initiate any dispute on itself. It can only adjudicate those issues which is brought to its notice, either by government, either by entity, or by the user of breaching of the data. Okay. But there is one exception. The only exception is board can take action when it has to impose the duties that is defined in the law, and that too with respect to the user, that if someone has frivolous or unauthentic complaint registered, then the board can take issue against that person and not against the entity. So that is a big gap. The author is saying that any autonomous board must have the power to initiate action on its own without the complaint being registered against an entity. Okay. But here that case is not there. Okay. So that is one another gap. So here these lines are important. In the data economy, users have diminished control and limited knowledge of the data transfers and exchanges. Okay. The digital literacy although still is there, but the awareness about the privacy is still not there. People are still, there is digital divide, and not adequately informed about the privacy issue. So these are this will always be there unless the people are educated, and unless the power of the boards and the legal agencies have proper implementation of the law. So it is ever evolving and complex nature of data processing, and user needs to be aware about this scenario. Okay. Another example the author uses is food delivery app, and they can use the data and give it to data brokers in exchange of money, which will be in the violation of contractual relationship. Okay. If I order something on Swiggy, they have my address, they have my you know voice memo. Sometimes they have other feature, they know my what is liking and disliking, and they can give it to some other company or some other restaurant in the area. So that is how it is manufactured and defabricated in many ways. The author suggests that, like the Competition Commission of India, this board, the data protection board should also have the powers, and they also should be able to initiate proceedings against the entity. And that is why this bill is very crucial, and the critical gaps which we discussed needs to be addressed and fulfilled, so that the data governance is proper. Now, in the conclusion, these lines will not suffice. It is saying that it is not only the gaps in DPP, but solution would be address challenges in implementation significant way to make full proof legislation. Instead, in the conclusion, you can write that the data protection is the crucial features in today's digital economy, as the people are also not well aware. It is very much essential not only to protect their personal data but also a community based data, and also must be proper information about the reprocessing of the non personal data. So that can be a conclusion. So, in the nutshell, this article talks about the data protection bill, which is going to be tabled in the monsoon session. There are critical gaps in the bill, which are similar to the bills presented previously two times. And now, the two critical gaps that we discuss is, first, the bill only targets the personal data of individual and not the re identification of the non-personal data. And the example we have seen that if we book a cab at certain time interval, it can be used to re-identify the person. Okay. Or we if we order something in certain time gap, it can be used to identify the behavior of the person. So the community data and non-personal data also need to be covered under the bill, for one. The second critical gap is the data protection board does not have the power to initiate the inquiry by itself against the entity. Okay. Because of which it cannot investigate the crimes on its own, it can only adjudicate. So the author is saying that there needs to be proper mechanism, and the board must have these much power to initiate the inquiry itself. Okay. So the re-identification of non-personal data, this is becoming a new problem, and personal data along with community data needs to be protected. So this was it in this article. I hope you gained some understanding and knowledge, and I hope you will be able to use it. And thank you so much for patient hearing. Happy learning.